Well, we're walking back to the car, about to get tripped by this giant boulder, as Cam and I just had our final visit ever to Six Flags America.
Yep.
We had almost a full day here. We didn't stay till close, but we got a lot done, a lot of great footage. Tried to document as much as we could. Cam, what do you think of Six Flags America?
The park's a mess, but not too often do you get to visit a park in its final season. So,
Yeah, it's got
cool to see it.
It's got a lot of problems, but
Yeah.
what park doesn't? It's not a great park, but there's still a lot here to enjoy. I'm gonna miss it. I cut it pretty close, but thankfully I was able to make one final visit to Six Flags America before its impending closure. By now, everyone knows about the park closing, and most coaster enthusiasts have already made their final visits. After having to push it back multiple times, I was finally able to visit the park with my friend Cam on August 23rd. What we found was a park very much stuck in the past, but one that still had plenty to offer despite that. First off, if you'd like to hear my thoughts on the park closing, I have another video up on my channel that talks about exactly that, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much here. But if you'd like to hear how our experience went at Six Flags America, then you're in the right place, so keep on watching. We arrived at the park just in time for opening, and thankfully the staff were very efficient in getting everyone through security as quickly as possible. The park makes a great first impression with its entrance area, Main Street 1776. I might be jumping the gun a bit here, but this is by far the nicest area of the entire park. It's full of that colonial era architecture, and the whole area really runs with the American theme. It's all very pleasing to look at, and the park has done a great job maintaining it. It even has ye old digital clock, so how could you hate it? From here I wanted to hurry and ride the last coaster in the park I still hadn't been on, and yeah, it was the kiddie coaster. Make fun of me all you want, but when a park is closing for good, I want to be able to say that I've been on every coaster in the park. Thankfully, it was a relatively quick and painless experience, as I got first ride of the day and then quickly went off to ride the rest of the coasters. One thing I noticed while walking around is that this Looney Tunes area is such a time capsule of the late 90s. Just by walking around here, I could tell that this was a remnant of an era of Six Flags that's long since passed. And it definitely gave me Geauga Lake vibes, since that kids area was where I spent much of my one and only visit to that park. From here, we headed to Mardi Gras to ride Wild One, but it wasn't open yet, so instead we got in line for Ragin' Cajun, the park's Wild Mouse, and I ended up enjoying this way more than I remembered. This was for one simple reason: the spinning we got on this was ridiculous. I feel pretty confident saying that this was the most I've spun on any Wild Mouse in my life. Even when talking about the same coaster model, I spun more here than on Exterminator and Crazy Mouse. The jazz music playing on the lift hill was a nice touch too, so I do hope this coaster gets relocated. After Ragin' Cajun, we went over to the park's Gotham City area and got in line for Joker's Jinx, the premier launch coaster. Whatever foggy memories I had of this coaster from back in 2019 told me that this was going to be a shaky and uncomfortable ride, but I was pleasantly surprised here. The launch was forceful, as most of these premier coasters are, and the whole layout was pretty smooth altogether. Some great snappy inversions here as well. But then, when the train hit the brakes, I guess it overshot them slightly, which led to us getting stopped on the brake run for just over 10 minutes while maintenance had to come reset a few things. I certainly didn't mind, but a few of the ride ops came over during this time and let us know what was going on, so I appreciate the honesty there. While walking off Joker's Jinx, I could get a clear look at Six Flags America's abandoned Thomastown. It's been closed for a few years now, and I could tell that although some of the rides have been removed, a few of them are just sitting back there. It was kinda creepy looking, to be honest, and it's a shame because when the area opened 15 years ago, it was the biggest expansion the park received since it became part of the Six Flags chain. I even got a few coaster shots from inside the area back in 2019. If only I knew back then that this section wouldn't be around much longer. Luck was on our side, however, as only one day before we visited, Superman Ride of Steel reopened after a lengthy closure. The catch was it was only running one train, and it'll be that way for the rest of the season according to the sign posted near the entrance. I did a full review of this coaster after my previous visit in 2019, and much of what I said then still applies now. Despite its unconventional, somewhat bizarre layout, this is absolutely an elite steel coaster, straight track notwithstanding. With that said, I did get to ride the original Ride of Steel at Darien Lake back in June, and now having ridden them both within a short period of time, I think I prefer the Darien Lake version just because of the location. It's very clear to me now that this layout was originally intended for Darien Lake because of how well it fits into its plot of land. Even the infamous straight section of track makes sense here because it's where you go over the water, whereas at Six Flags America you're just flying over grass. Make no mistake, both of these coasters are fantastic and I recommend either one, but if I have to pick, I'm riding Darien Lakes again. I still have no idea if Superman will be relocated or not. It's pretty hard to say, as I can't think of many parks that could use a coaster over 200 feet, or don't simply have one already. It's very possible that this could just become a parts donor for Darien Lake's Ride of Steel, so at least we'll still have one of the two remaining, but I'd rather have them both. I don't know at this point, but I'll be paying attention to where this one might end up, because it's easily the headliner attraction of Six Flags America. Cam, what'd you think of Ride of Steel? I mean, this is one I actually can call it Superman.
The straight track is my favorite part.
We applauded for it.
Yes. The field, the helix of grass is also good.
While walking down the exit ramp of Superman, Cam and I stopped and took a good look out at the empty field leading to Batwing. At the time, it had been closed for over a month, but there was still hope that it could reopen for some final rides. Those hopes have been dashed now, though, as the park has confirmed that Batwing has already given its final rides. We couldn't even walk down the pathway leading to Batwing as it was blocked off. It's a sad way for the Vekoma Flying Dutchman to go out. Batwing is the last standing example of this near-extinct coaster model, and when I rode it during my last visit, it was my favorite coaster in the park. It was kinda shaky, sure, but I didn't find it to be painful, and it was just the right amount of intense. I loved the inversions too, especially that vertical loop. I'm glad I got to ride it years ago, but I still wish I could have ridden it one last time. I'll definitely miss it. By this point in the day, Wild One had finally opened, and we made our way over there. Dispatches were pretty slow, but it was more than worth the wait to get back on this coaster. It had been a few years, so I forgot just how good Wild One really is. For a coaster that originated in 1917, it still packs a punch. And I know, you can make the argument that it's been relocated and modified over the years, so it's not entirely accurate to say that Wild One is from 1917 anymore, but I don't care. It's still a historic coaster, and it's fantastic. Wild One's original name at Paragon Park was Giant Coaster, and it certainly lives up to that name. It's nearly 100 feet tall, and seeing this massive wooden structure in 1917 must have been really intimidating. The train maintains its speed well over the course of the layout, and it's a long layout too, as the coaster crosses almost completely through the center of the park. It's full of some good airtime moments, and one turn in particular that will absolutely catch you off guard and slam you into the side of the train if you're not prepared for it. The helix at the end is the perfect way to cap off this wooden coaster classic. I don't care what it takes. I need Wild One to get saved. No matter how unlikely that is, now that Batwing's closed, Wild One is my favorite coaster in the park. Wild One is to Six Flags America in the same way that Phoenix is to Knoebels. This is the coaster people should be traveling to this park to ride above all else, and if it ends up being demolished, that'll be a huge shame because it's fantastic. Since we were headed that way anyway, we decided to head into the park's newest area, Steamtown, and ride the SLC. It's a nice revamp for what used to be the park's western area, and it brought a revamp to some of the existing attractions here. They added a Zamperla Nebulas, which I didn't ride since I've been on a bunch of these, but it looks great, and they added animatronic dinosaurs to the park's Rapids ride, which didn't open all day. I was so bummed out over this since, dinosaurs. I really wanted to ride it. On that note, most of the park's water rides were closed. Penguin's Blizzard River was closed as well, which is a shame since that's a pretty unique ride. You don't see a lot of these in parks anymore. In fact, the only water ride I saw open was Shipwreck Falls, the park's Shoot the Chute ride. Apparently this has been closed for years, but maintenance got it open for the final season, so major props to them if that's true. Back to Steamtown though. This used to be the home of the Vekoma SLC Mind Eraser, but with new paint and some new trains, it's now Professor Screamore's Skywinder, and yeah, it's still not great, but it's at least slightly more bearable. I feel the same about this as I do about Mind Eraser at Darien Lake, which received similar new trains this year. There's less headbanging, but it still beats you up by shaking you all over the place. I wanted to give this another chance later in the day, but it went down and I don't think it reopened. Maybe that was a blessing in disguise. It's likely Sidewinder will get relocated though, since SLCs are still popular outside of coaster enthusiast circles, especially since this one just got refurbished. Now it's time to talk about Roar, the park's other wooden coaster, and well, there's not a whole lot to talk about. The whole day leading up to this point, I could not remember a single thing about Roar from my previous visit. I knew I had ridden it, but I couldn't remember a thing about the actual ride experience. One ride later and I figured out why. Roar is the most by-the-numbers wooden coaster I've ever ridden. It doesn't do anything all that special. It has some hills, a couple turns, that's it really. It's a wonder how this never received the RMC treatment because I don't think anybody would have been upset to lose Roar. At least the other Roar at Discovery Kingdom got turned into Joker, which looks to be a far superior ride. I'm sure this was a far more impressive wooden coaster when it opened in 1998, but as it stands for its final season, it's a tired remnant of wooden coaster design. After that I rode Firebird because I felt obligated to. Tear it down, please. I'm not trying to exaggerate here, but it's awful. I hate this thing. It was probably better as Apocalypse, but now with the sit-down trains, your head gets slammed around at the slightest turn. This was the first B&M coaster, and man does it show. Actually, given some of the newer B&M offerings, it seems they've come full circle back to shaky, rough coasters. The best part aside from the brake run is the fire effect, and that's best enjoyed from the walkway next to the ride. I don't want to talk about Firebird anymore. I'll be glad to see it demolished, but the fact it's a B&M probably means I'll end up riding it again at another park in the future. Oh joy. Stupid, awful, terrible piece of garbage. Tear this thing down, please. Don't relocate it anywhere. Get rid of it. Throw it out. I didn't like it. At this point in the day, the park was starting to get pretty busy, so Cam and I decided to use the opportunity to walk around the park and get some B-roll of various rides and areas of the park. We lucked out with some really beautiful weather that day, and I went home with nearly 6 gigabytes of footage. I normally try to film whatever I can when I visit parks, but when a park is closing forever, I go a bit overboard, but I think the effort was worth it. The benefit of going on a Saturday is the park doesn't look like it's closing. There are crowds all over the place, coaster trains are full, and the footage gives off the vibe of a typical summer day at an amusement park, which is exactly what I wanted. Gathering footage made up the bulk of the latter part of our day. Sadly, we couldn't stay till close as we had an over 4-hour drive ahead of us, but we stayed until about 6:30. During this time, I found myself oddly fascinated by the park's Looney Tunes area. As I mentioned before, it had clearly not been updated much since the late 90s, and it gave me Geauga Lake vibes as a remnant of a lost era of Six Flags. As we were exploring, I noticed what I thought was a gift shop at the back of the area, but turned out to be another remnant of the past, a Gotcha Games. Back at Geauga Lake, they had this massive area called Gotcha Games, which was a multi-level kids' play area that allowed them to shoot foam balls at their parents. I spent the majority of my time at Geauga Lake in this area back in 2001, so seeing a very similar attraction still standing 24 years later made me feel like I just jumped back in time. Sadly, the building was closed off and looked like it hadn't been open in a while, but it is still listed on the website, so maybe they do open it once in a while. Either way, I was so glad to see this as it felt like a brief window back to a moment from my childhood. With filming completed and our batteries nearly dead, it was time to get our final ride at Six Flags America, and what better attraction to end with than Wild One. I can't stress enough just how big of a loss this coaster will be, not just for the park but for the amusement industry as a whole. I know some people are hoping that Knoebels will step in and save Wild One, but I'm not sure how feasible that would be, given the size of the coaster and the logistics involved with relocating a wooden coaster in this day and age. That doesn't rule out the possibility of another park purchasing Wild One, but chances are slim that this coaster will operate again after the season concludes. For that reason, this was the perfect final ride of the day, and a great way to end the trip. On the way out, we stopped in a few of the gift shops looking for merch, and I was particularly captivated by the Looney Tunes Emporium at the front of the park. Not for the merch as you'd expect, but rather the overall presentation of the store. The walls and shelves were decked out in purple, green, red, and yellow, and statues of various characters were scattered throughout. Much like the kids area, this store felt like a time capsule in and of itself. I wonder what will happen to all of these statues after the park closes. Hopefully they end up in hands that will appreciate and maintain them, instead of just getting tossed out. After that, and after a few final shots before my battery died, it was time for us to bid farewell for good to Six Flags America. Despite not staying till close, I feel we had a great day and made the most of the time we had available at the park. With this latest visit fresh in my mind, it solidified my opinion that despite its negative reputation among enthusiasts, Six Flags America was not a terrible park. The coaster lineup was pretty hit and miss, but the foundation was there to keep making additions and build the park up into something even better. We almost had something kinda cool, as the Togo Ultra Twister from Six Flags Astroworld showed up at Six Flags America in 2006. However, it was allegedly damaged in transit and would end up never being rebuilt. Having the only Ultra Twister in North America would have definitely been a unique claim to fame for Six Flags America, but sadly that just wasn't meant to be. In hindsight, it's disappointing that Six Flags chose smaller investments here over the years and rarely added large attractions after the early 2000s. I can't believe Six Flags America got skipped over for additions that seem to come to nearly every other Six Flags park. The park never received an SNS 4D free spin, they never got an RMC Raptor or iBox conversion for Roar, and they never got a Justice League Sally Dark ride. Nearly every other Six Flags park received at least one of these, but Six Flags America was completely ignored during this time, which contributed to the park feeling like a time capsule of sorts. Now, am I trying to argue that Six Flags America was some kind of hidden gem, misunderstood by enthusiasts? Well, no, but I believe every park has at least a few redeeming qualities, and that was absolutely the case here. There were also some negatives during our visit though, the worst of which were the operations. The ride ops here took their sweet time loading and dispatching trains, leading to lots of stacking and trains full of guests sitting on brake runs for 5 or more minutes at a time. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it adds up when you're sitting on the brakes under the baking sun. It became sort of a game for us while waiting for Wild One, trying to predict if the train in the station would dispatch before the second train hit the brakes. I think that happened twice during the half hour we were waiting. I also want to mention that there were a few areas of the park that just smelled like straight sewage, mostly near the entrance to the water park. I don't know if there's a connection there, and I'm not going to try to think too much about it. This park also has a serious bee problem. They're everywhere, and they swarm you even as you're just walking around minding your own business. I actually got stung on my back while going up the lift hill of the SLC, just when I thought riding an SLC couldn't get any worse. With practice, though, we were able to avoid most of the bee-infested areas, so it was only a brief problem in hindsight. Alright, have I talked enough about Six Flags America yet? I suppose it's time I wrap this up, as this will be my final word on the park. I know a few enthusiasts who are planning to visit for the park's final day in November, but I was content to get one final visit during the summer season. Six Flags America was not a phenomenal, world-class amusement destination, but it had some good rides in its lineup and a pretty charming atmosphere in spots. It's interesting to think about what this park is like in an alternate universe where Six Flags continued heavily investing here. Maybe in that universe the park is operating as normal, perhaps even adding something new next year. Back to reality though, things are playing out a little differently. Despite a few negatives, I still had a lot of fun. All the ride-ops were very polite and seemed like they were making the best of this otherwise depressing situation. I had a great visit here overall, and I'll definitely be watching closely over the coming months to see what becomes of the park, as well as its rides. Six Flags America had a lot of untapped potential, and sadly it looks like it's going to stay that way. I'm definitely going to miss it. And that's how my final visit to Six Flags America went. If you've had the chance to visit the park in its final season, feel free to let me know your thoughts down below. Let's join together to commemorate the park's nearly 45 years of history. As always, I appreciate you all for watching. See you next time for more amusement parks here on Rampaging Rex Productions.